The red warning lights flashed across the Galactic Council monitoring station like angry stars. Operator Kickstall had been working the night shift for 15 years, and he had never seen anything quite like this. His forearms moved quickly across the control panel as alerts screamed from every direction. "What in the seven moons is happening out there?" he muttered to himself, his scaled fingers dancing over the holographic displays. The emergency beacon was unlike anything in the database. It was powerful, desperate, and coming from a place that made his stomach drop. The signal belonged to the Peaceful Dawn, one of the Council's most important diplomatic vessels. On board was Ambassador Velinara of the Crystal Federation, along with 12 of the galaxy's brightest scientific minds. They had been on what should have been a routine survey mission, cataloging new star systems on the outer rim of civilized space. But this was anything but routine. "Commander Vextrol to the bridge immediately," Kickstall called over the intercom, his voice shaking slightly. He had been monitoring space communications for decades, but he had never heard a distress call quite like this one. The message came through in broken fragments, crackling with interference and fear. "This is the Peaceful Dawn, under attack by unknown vessels. Massive ships with technology we don't recognize. Our shields are failing fast. Requesting immediate assistance from any Council vessel in range." Commander Vextrol arrived on the bridge within minutes, his long coat flowing behind him as he rushed to the main console. He was a veteran of 3 galactic conflicts and had seen his share of emergency situations, but the look on Kickstall's face told him this was different. "Show me what we have," Vextrol commanded, leaning over the operator's shoulder. The tactical display lit up with a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. A pulsing red dot showed the location of the distress signal, and when Vextrol saw where it was coming from, his blood turned to ice water in his veins. The Sol System, the Forbidden Zone, the quarantine sector that had been off-limits to all galactic traffic for over 300 years. "That can't be right," Vextrol whispered, but he knew their instruments never lied. "Double-check those coordinates." Kickstall ran the scan 3 more times, each result exactly the same. The Peaceful Dawn was deep inside Sol space, near the 3rd planet from the star, the legendary death world called Earth, for 3 centuries. The Galactic Council had maintained a strict embargo around the Sol system. The stories about Earth and its inhabitants had become the stuff of nightmares and cautionary tales told to young aliens across the galaxy. Humans were described as savage, violent creatures who had somehow evolved on a planet so dangerous that it would kill most galactic species within hours. They called Earth a death world because everything on it seemed designed to destroy life. The gravity was crushing. The atmosphere was poisonous to most species, and the weather could change from gentle warmth to deadly storms in a matter of minutes. The oceans were filled with predators, the land was covered in dangerous beasts, and even the plants could kill you if you touched the wrong ones. But it was the humans themselves that truly terrified the galaxy. Stories spoke of a species that had conquered their deadly planet through pure stubbornness and violence. They were said to be incredibly strong, impossibly tough, and absolutely refusing to give up, no matter how hopeless the situation became. "Sir," Kickstall said quietly, the Peaceful Dawn was supposed to be studying mineral formations in the Andromeda sector. They had no authorization to go anywhere near Sol space. Vextrol stared at the dying signal on his screen. Every few seconds, it grew a little weaker. Somewhere out there, 12 innocent beings were fighting for their lives against unknown attackers. They were counting on the Galactic Council to save them, but saving them would mean breaking the most sacred law in galactic politics. It would mean contacting the humans. The commander's hands trembled as he realized he faced an impossible choice. Let innocent diplomats die in the cold darkness of space, or wake up the sleeping giants of Earth. Commander Vextrol's claws shook as he reached for the communication controls. 300 years of galactic law weighed on his shoulders, but the fading distress signal from the peaceful dawn left him no choice. 12 innocent lives hung in the balance, and the Council's nearest rescue ships were days away. "This is madness," he whispered to himself, but his finger hovered over the transmit button anyway. The other operators on the bridge watched in stunned silence. Everyone knew the stories about Earth and its savage inhabitants. The quarantine had been put in place for good reason, they all believed. Humans were supposed to be primitive, violent creatures who barely understood space travel. "Opening channel to Sol System," Kixtel announced, his voice barely above a whisper, transmitting on all known frequencies. Dexrol expected static. Maybe some crude radio signals from a backward civilization. The Council's intelligence reports suggested that humans had only recently developed basic rocket technology. They would probably be confused by an alien transmission, perhaps even frightened. Instead, the response came immediately. A crystal-clear holographic image materialized above the communication console, so sharp and detailed that it seemed like the person was standing right there on the bridge. The figure was unmistakably human and unmistakably dangerous. Admiral Rebecca Stone looked like she had been forged in the fires of a dozen wars. Her steel-gray eyes seemed to look right through Dexrol, studying him with the cold precision of a predator evaluating prey. Deep scars ran across her weathered face, telling stories of battles fought and won. Her dark hair was pulled back in a military style, and her uniform bore insignia that spoke of high rank and hard-earned authority. "This is Admiral Rebecca Stone of the United Earth Defense Force," she said with a calm that was somehow more terrifying than any threat. Her voice carried the weight of absolute confidence, the tone of someone who had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. "State your business." The words hit Dexrol like a physical blow. United Earth Defense Force. These primitive savages had a unified military, and this woman, this human, spoke as if she commanded fleets of starships. "There's been an emergency," Dexrol stammered, his usual diplomatic composure completely shattered. "One of our vessels is under attack in your system." What happened next defied everything the Galactic Council believed about human capabilities. Admiral Stone didn't ask for clarification or demand proof. She didn't waste time with negotiations or diplomatic protocols. Instead, she began asking precise, military questions with the efficiency of a trained professional. "Vessel classification and crew complement?" Stone asked, her fingers already moving across controls that Dexrol couldn't see. "Diplomatic vessel Peaceful Dawn. 12 souls aboard." Crystal Federation Ambassador Velinara, commanding Dexrol, replied, finding himself automatically responding to her authority. "Attack vector and hostile identification," Stone continued, and somehow Dexrol knew she was already accessing information, cross-referencing data, preparing for action. Within 3 minutes, Admiral Stone had extracted every piece of information about the missing ship. She had somehow accessed Earth's deep space sensor network, a network that shouldn't have existed according to Council intelligence, and identified the attackers with terrifying precision. "Void Reapers," Stone said, and her expression hardened into something that made Dexrol, a species' natural prey instincts, scream warnings. "Machine collective. Artificial intelligence gone rogue. We've tangled with them before." The casual way she mentioned previous encounters with one of the galaxy's most feared threats sent chills through everyone on the Council bridge. The Void Reapers were mechanical nightmares that had terrorized the Outer Rim for decades. Their technology was so advanced that most species simply fled when they appeared. But this human spoke of them like old enemies, familiar and manageable. "How many souls aboard that diplomatic vessel?" Stone asked, and something in her voice suggested that the number mattered deeply to her. 12, Dexrol managed to say. Admiral Stone's jaw tightened, and for just a moment, Dexrol saw something beyond the military mask. He saw genuine concern for people she had never met, Beings from a species she probably knew nothing about. But they were in danger, and that was enough. Task Force Thunder deploys in 60 minutes, Stone announced with finality. Admiral Stone out. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the Council chamber in absolute silence. The Galactic Council's long-range sensors began screaming alerts exactly 58 minutes after Admiral Stone ended her transmission. What they detected should have been impossible, according to every scientific model the galaxy's greatest minds had developed over millennia. Commander Kickstell called out, his voice cracking with disbelief. "You need to see this immediately." Vexrel rushed to the sensor station, expecting to see, perhaps, a single primitive Earth vessel limping toward their position. The humans were supposed to be barely capable of basic spaceflight, after all. Maybe they had managed to cobble together some kind of rescue ship from their crude technology. Instead, the tactical display showed something that made his heart skip several beats. 12 ships had just materialized at the edge of Council space, appearing out of nowhere like ghosts, materializing from the void. But these weren't the primitive chemical rockets that Earth's ancient radio broadcasts had suggested. These were sleek, deadly warships that radiated power like miniature stars. "Identify those vessels," Vexrel ordered, though part of him already knew the answer would terrify him. 8 destroyers, 3 heavy cruisers, and 1 massive dreadnought, Kickstyle reported, his instruments struggling to process the energy readings. "Commander, these ships are putting out power signatures that our sensors can barely measure. They're running so hot that our equipment keeps threatening to overload." The largest ship dominated the formation like a predator surrounded by its pack. The dreadnought was easily twice the size of the Council's most powerful battleships, bristling with weapon systems that defied classification. Its hull seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, giving it an ominous presence that made experienced military officers instinctively step back from their displays. "This is Captain Tyler Hayes, of the destroyer Lightning," a human voice suddenly crackled across all communication frequencies. "United Earth Defense Force responding to humanitarian crisis. All vessels maintain current positions. Any interference with our rescue operation will be met with extreme prejudice." The casual threat in Hayes' voice sent shivers through the bridge crew. This wasn't diplomatic language or careful political maneuvering. This was a soldier, stating facts, with the confidence of someone who had the firepower to back up every word. "How did they get here so fast?" whispered one of the junior operators. "Our fastest ships would take hours to cover that distance." But the humans were already moving, and their coordination was unlike anything the Council had ever witnessed. The 12 ships moved as if they shared a single mind, each vessel perfectly positioned to support the others. Their formation was a masterpiece of tactical planning, with overlapping fields of fire and mutual protection that spoke of extensive combat experience. The energy signatures coming from the human fleet made the Council's instruments struggle to keep up. These ships were powered by technology that shouldn't exist, running fusion reactors that burned hotter than some stars. Their weapons showed power readings that exceeded theoretical maximums, and their engines produced thrust ratios that violated known physics. "Sir," Kickstall said quietly, "these aren't primitive chemical rockets. These are warships more advanced than anything in our databases." Admiral Stone's flagship, the massive dreadnought Relentless, led the formation with predatory grace. Its hull was scarred from countless battles, telling stories of conflicts fought in the darkness between stars. Weapon ports lined its sides like the teeth of some cosmic beast, each one capable of destroying entire enemy squadrons. The human fleet began its jump to hyperspace, and even that simple action shattered galactic understanding. Council ships required careful calculations and lengthy preparation before attempting faster-than-light travel. Human vessels simply tore holes in reality and stepped through them like walking through doorways. Jumping to hyperspace, Captain Hayes announced matter-of-factly. Estimated arrival at crisis zone in 42 minutes. Any hostiles engaging our people will be destroyed without warning. The space around the human fleet began to twist and bend as their jump drives activated. Reality itself seemed to protest, as 12 warships forced their way into dimensions that most species could barely theorize about. The energy discharge was so intense that several council monitoring stations had to shut down their sensors to prevent permanent damage. In seconds, the human fleet vanished, leaving only empty space and the lingering impression of barely contained violence. Commander Vexrel stared at the empty tactical display, finally understanding the magnitude of what he had done. For 3 centuries, the galaxy had assumed Earth was home to primitive savages armed with clubs and crude rockets. Instead, they had been sharing space with apex predators who possessed technology that made the Council's greatest achievements look like children's toys. "What have we awakened?" he whispered. The human fleet tore through hyperspace like angry gods, covering impossible distances in minutes rather than the hours it should have taken. When Task Force Thunder dropped back into normal space near the Kepler 442 system, what they found would have sent most galactic species fleeing in terror. The peaceful dawn hung in space like a dying bird, its elegant hull scorched and battered. The diplomatic vessel was caught in the crushing gravitational pull of a neutron star, slowly spiraling towards certain destruction. But that wasn't the worst part. 37 Void Reaper attack drones surrounded the crippled ship like metallic vultures, their black holes absorbing all light and radiating menace. These weren't ordinary pirates or raiders. The Void Reapers were artificial intelligences that had gone completely insane, obsessed with converting all organic life into scrap metal and data streams. Each drone was the size of a small cruiser, bristling with weapons that could slice through planetary shields. Their technology was so advanced that most galactic species simply ran when they detected Reaper signatures. Fighting them was considered suicide by military experts across known space. The asterisk peaceful. Dawn's asterisk shields flickered like a dying candle, barely holding back the neutron star's deadly radiation and the constant barrage of Reaper weapons. Inside that fragile bubble of energy, 12 terrified diplomats waited for death or rescue, whichever came first. Admiral Stone's voice cut across the tactical channel with ice-cold precision. "All ships, combat formation Delta, Hayes, take your destroyers and punch us a hole. We're going in hard and fast." What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations, assuming anyone survived to tell the story. The humans looked at 37 advanced war machines surrounding a neutron star and decided the odds were acceptable. "Copy that, Admiral," Captain Hayes replied from the destroyer Lightning. "All destroyers, follow my lead. Time to show these tin cans what Earth sends to family reunions." The 8 human destroyers accelerated toward the Reaper formation like bullets fired from the hand of an angry god. They didn't attempt to flank or use clever tactics. They didn't try to negotiate or find a peaceful solution. They simply charged straight into the teeth of the enemy formation with a kind of reckless courage that made other species question human sanity. The Void Reapers responded exactly as their programming dictated, concentrating all firepower on the approaching destroyers. Plasma beams hot enough to melt asteroids lanced through space, turning the void into a deadly light show. Any normal warship would have been vaporized instantly. The human destroyers flew through the barrage like they were sailing through a gentle rain shower, their shields held against weapons that should have reduced them to component atoms. Their hulls shrugged off direct hits that could crack moons. And all the while, they kept accelerating, kept charging, kept getting closer to their mechanical enemies. "This is Captain Lisa Grant aboard the Assault Shuttle Warrior," a calm female voice announced over the chaos. "Beginning rescue approach to diplomatic vessel. All Marines prepare for hostile boarding action." while the destroyers and cruisers tore the Reaper formation apart with weapons that redefined the meaning of overwhelming firepower. Grant piloted her small shuttle through a maze of death. Plasma beams crossed the space around her like deadly spiderwebs, any one of which could have destroyed her tiny craft. She flew through them anyway. The Shuttle Warrior was built for exactly this kind of impossible mission. Its hull was designed to survive atmospheric entry on Deathworlds, and its pilot was trained to fly through situations that would kill most beings from fear alone. Grant docked with the peaceful dawn while battles raged all around them. Her shuttle's magnetic clamps finding purchase on the diplomatic vessel's damaged hull. Behind her, a dozen human marines checked their weapons and prepared to board a ship that might be crawling with hostile nanobots. "Boarding successful," Grant reported, her voice steady, despite the chaos surrounding her. "Beginning evacuation of diplomatic personnel." Inside the peaceful dawn, Ambassador Velanara huddled with her surviving staff in what remained of their ship's command center. The Crystal Federation diplomat had served in 3 galactic conflicts, but she had never experienced terror quite like this. Then the airlock burst open, and Salvation arrived, wearing human military uniforms. Captain Grant stepped through the breach like an avenging angel, her combat armor scarred from a dozen previous battles. Behind her came Marines who moved with the fluid precision of apex predators, their weapons sweeping the corridors for threats. "Ma'am, I'm Captain Grant, United Earth Defense Force," she said to the stunned ambassador. "We're here to get you home." The evacuation took exactly 4 minutes. 4 minutes, while the battle raged outside. While Void Reaper drones tried to break through human shields, while the neutron star's gravity pulled everything toward crushing death. Grant personally carried Ambassador Velanara to the shuttle, her powered armor easily handling the diplomat's weight, while her marines established a defensive perimeter. When hostile nanots tried to board their rescue craft, the humans burned them out of the air with weapons that turned microscopic machines into harmless vapor. When the smoke finally cleared, and the last Void Reaper drone exploded into twisted wreckage, 37 of the galaxy's most feared war machines had been reduced to scrap metal. Drifting around a neutron star, 12 grateful aliens owed their lives to warriors from a world the galaxy had dismissed as primitive and savage. 3 weeks after the rescue at Kepler 442, the Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council had never been so packed. Representatives from every known species crowded into the massive chamber, their conversations creating a buzz of excitement and nervous energy that filled the air like electricity before a storm. Ambassador Velanara stood at the center podium, her crystalline form still bearing the faint scars from her ordeal. The Crystal Federation diplomat had requested this emergency session personally, and every being in the galaxy wanted to hear what she had to say about humanity's first official contact in 3 centuries. "Honored delegates," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's advanced acoustics. "I stand before you today as living proof that everything we believed about the species called humans was completely wrong." A ripple of whispers ran through the assembled crowd. The quarantine around Earth had been based on centuries of intelligence reports describing humans as primitive, violent savages barely capable of spaceflight. Those reports had just been shattered by 12 human warships that had accomplished the impossible. "The Void Reapers had us trapped," Velanara continued, her voice growing stronger as she relived the memory. 37 of their attack drones surrounded our ship, and we were slowly being pulled into a neutron star. Our shields were failing, our engines were dead, and we had maybe minutes before complete destruction. The ambassador paused, looking around the chamber at faces representing dozens of different species. Many of them had lost ships, colonies, even entire worlds to Void Reaper attacks over the decades. The mechanical horrors were considered one of the galaxy's greatest threats, unstoppable forces that appeared without warning and left only death in their wake. When the human fleet arrived, I thought we were witnessing our own funeral procession, she admitted. 12 ships against 37 Reapers seemed like a noble but futile gesture. I expected to watch them die trying to save us, and then die ourselves shortly after. The chamber fell completely silent. Even the translator systems seemed to hold their breath. Instead, I watched those 12 human ships tear through the Reaper formation like it was made of paper. They didn't use clever tactics or advanced technology that we couldn't understand. They simply fought with a determination that defied all logic, charging straight into enemy fire without hesitation or fear. Ambassador Velenara's voice took on an almost reverent tone as she continued. They fought with the fury of solar storms, their weapons burning brighter than stars. But when Captain Lisa Grant carried me to safety aboard her rescue shuttle, her hands were as gentle as spring rain on new flowers. The crystal diplomat touched a faint scar on her shoulder, a wound that had been carefully tended during the evacuation. Admiral Stone herself treated my injuries while her flagship shook from enemy fire. Here was a warrior who commanded fleets that could level planets, and she was personally ensuring that a stranger from an unknown species received proper medical care. Captain David Chen, Admiral Stone's tactical officer, stood near the back of the chamber as living proof of everything the ambassador described. The human officer had volunteered to attend this historic session, and his presence sent ripples of fascination through the assembled delegates. Chen wasn't particularly tall or physically imposing compared to some of the larger alien species present, but something about his calm confidence made even the most massive delegates unconsciously step aside when he passed. Battle scars marked his face and hands, telling stories of conflicts fought and survived. His uniform was simple and practical, without the elaborate decorations that many species use to display rank and status. Yet every being in that chamber could sense the quiet competence that radiated from him, like heat from a forge. This was someone who had stared death in the face and emerged victorious, not once, but many times. The vote before us today, announced the council speaker, is whether to formally lift the quarantine around the Sol system and extend an invitation for humanity to join the Galactic Council. The debate that followed was surprisingly brief. Species after species stood to voice their support, many citing their own encounters with threats that the humans had apparently been quietly handling for years. It seemed that Earth's warriors had been protecting the galaxy's outer rim from dangers that most civilizations never even knew existed. When the final tally was announced, the vote was unanimous. For the first time in galactic history, a previously quarantined species was being invited to join the council, not as junior members or probationary participants, but as full equals. Admiral Stone's response, delivered via quantum communication from Earth, was typically human in its directness. "We appreciate the invitation," her image said, from the massive display screen. "We'll consider it carefully and get back to you with our decision. But I want to make something clear to everyone listening. Whether we join your council or not, if someone out there needs help, you know where to find us." The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in thoughtful silence. The galaxy had spent 3 centuries fearing the Deathworlders of Sol. Now they realized that Earth's children had quietly become their guardians, standing watch against threats that most species couldn't even imagine facing. The age of human isolation was over,